Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. My channel is Discerning What is True. Going to be reading from a particular book by R.A. Schwaller. This particular book is called A Study of Numbers. First, I wanted to read a little bit about who this guy is. Very few people know who this guy was. Over 100 years ago, most people who were involved looking into Egyptian history, that type of thing, he was known, well known. In fact, people were clamoring for wanting to know more about who this guy is. Anyway, Rene himself was from was born in France. He was an Egyptologist and mystic. He popularized the idea of sacred geometry in ancient Egypt during his study of the art and architecture of the Temple of Lazar in Egypt and his subsequent book called The Temple in Man. He was born is in December 30th, 1887, and he passed away on December 7th, 1961. He's known as being an esotericist. Um, he was an alternate, that is, an Egyptologist. He didn't go along with the crowd, so to speak. He left at the age of 18 after having completed an apprenticeship with his father in pharmaceutical chemistry, and then moved to Paris to study modern chemistry and physics. He developed an interest in alchemy, though, reading every alchemy text he could find, including those by Ramonluff, not FF, LL. He also developed an interest in painting and becoming a student of Matisse. He also studied anything that was done by Parclitius also. He was given the title de Lubicz in 1919 by the Lithuanian writer, mystic, and diplomat Oscar Vladislaus de Lubicz, Métis, if that's correct. Please forgive me, I'm not great at French. He also wrote under this mystic name of ALR, signifying light of the higher mind. He wrote enormously books. Trying to find his books here. Um, he wrote the book. Here we are. Here we go. The Study of Numbers, which is a guide to the constant creation of the universe, which is the book I'm going to be reading. He also wrote a book called Temple in Man, Sacred Architecture and the Perfect Man. He also wrote a book entitled called The Symbology, that is symbolically of Egypt, Science, and the Evolution of Consciousness. He wrote another particular book, again, like I said, The Temple of Man, at the South at Luxor. He wrote also Esotericism in Symbols. He wrote also The King of Pharaonica Theocracy. He wrote another book called A Introduction to the Wisdom of the Temple. He wrote another book called The Temples of Karnak, K-A-R-N, Karnak, K-A-R-N-A-K. And he wrote another book called Nature Word also. Anyway, let me get into the book here. I'm going to be reading out of the book, that is, and so people can see what it's about. A study of numbers. This is going to be the forward part, and I'm going to be reading it from the book here. Whenever our spirit or mind wishes to sift out from among the chaos of cosmic phenomenon the truth, or at least the most likely reason for the being of things and their life, it needs a guide. Let me get the light a little bit better here for me. This need to simplify the world's appearance, to reduce it to simple expression, may be the fact of our inability to extend our view beyond a certain limited horizon, and inability to resulting from the imperfections of our sensory organization. Whether this is so, or whether the world is in reality, the world is reality of so disorganized a complete complexity that cannot be understood in its totality, amounts to the same thing. In any case, irrespectively of whether or not the idea is accepted by people, uninstructed in occult teachings. Our sensory organization clearly seems to be imperfect. It is therefore capable of being perfected, though not by a sensitive completion of the senses, the sensory memory, or the natural mnemonic function, but by a perfecting of consciousness. This latter requires the determination of reactives, that is, your senses, corresponding to the energetic activities and influences of the environment. We lack direct consciousness of space and time. We can only know them indirectly by means of mass, force, and energy, and by the intermediacy of phenomenon which may be tested by one or another of our five senses. Human beings thus lack the two senses necessary for a knowledge of all causes, that is, of this imperfection, of which we are always being made aware. The need is born to simplify. By this need, everything is reduced to fundamental properties, without any inattention ever being paid to the form of all the various effects of this universe organization. The result is that the science of numbers, the most wonderful guide to the continual creation of the universe, remains an enormous hypocrisy. It will remain so as long as use has not awakened in us the higher consciousness that usually escapes us, as long as we have not, by a deeper knowledge of things and their becoming, come to recognize numbers as true, and as long, finally, as we have not experienced with our senses that the living relation of a cause to an effect is truer and more real than the effect could ever be. Between a hypothesis and the truth exists a world. This world is the battlefield of reason and emotion, which we define as the pure sensibility of the senses, an abstraction formed from actual sensation. In this world, the logical reverie, that is, of the sciences and the ecstasy of the mystic meet. The first is analytical, the second synthetic, and both lead to the recognition of the science of numbers as the science of the basic laws of the universe, the science which fixes the proportions of the building, indicating the position of each stone and determining its moment of construction or destruction, that is, the architect's plan. That there have been men who knew how to read this plan cannot, without doubting all history, be doubted. To cite but two examples, Plato testifies to the existence of Pythagorean science, and Judaism attests to the truth of the Kabbalah. To understand this study of numbers in a fruitful manner, we believe it to be necessary to adopt the following general plan of study. The five essential points being the basics of the study will be observed in the following order. Numbers, that is, the values and relations. 2. The disengagement of numbers. 3. The harmonic basis of numbers. 4. The development of values. Number 5 being the establishment of harmony. Numbers are expressed by the figures 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on up to 10. Here one will note immediately the double nature attached to numbers. There are, to begin with, numbers in themselves, forming a quantitative relationship between each other. This is a relation between unity and multiplicity, with a fixed quantity of degrees and variation. Following it, there is a quantitative relation which results from counting things and defining a quantitative relation between them. In this quantitative and quantitative function, quality and quantitative functions, we may discern both the nature of numbers, their immanent abstract life, and the values of numbers, their manifested concrete life. By the words being abstract nature of numbers, I mean the vital bond that exists between them. By the concrete nature of numbers, I mean the manifestation of life under its many material, accidentally aspects, weight, density, color, etc. These two aspects of the nature of numbers have a common function, that is succession, by which the past, the present, and simultaneously as well as the future are defined. Everything and all things may therefore be traced back to numbers, which are the last or first manifestation of matter, and the first cause of the creative idea. By this fact, numbers are but the ideal and concrete relationship in the universe. Hence, they constitute the principle of life, the vital impulse of the cosmos. 2. To understand true succession in creation, one must know how the first or abstract nature of numbers develops. Sorry about that. Got to turn it on. Nature of numbers develops, how multiplicity disengages itself from unity. It is obvious that the first unity, the cause without a cause, is indivisible. There are not yet any halves, you see, or thirds, etc. It is the first unity. Hence, it is purely quantitative, without quantity. The first unity is always, although under different expressions, the idea of the absolute, of the eternal, of the undefined. This idea contains contraries, that is, i.e., that is the same nature twice, but opposed in its tendencies, because the idea of absolute can only exist at the perfect stabilization of two essential contrary natures. This stabilization cannot, however, exist since manifestation immediately follows from it. In the last analysis, it is this idea that is generally meant by the term cause without a cause. This double nature of the first, that is abstract, one is the reason for the disengagement of multiplicity from unity. As we observe, it is the nature in each branch of a tree, or indeed in any natural phenomenon whatsoever. You'll notice that a lot of these guys, as I read this book just before this tonight, from Kuhn, the tree is always a key symbol. The tree is always as a key symbol in the Bible. All these things is key. Nature possesses in itself the tendency to make the definite out of the indefinite. The first one can therefore only create a multiplicity by quantity of addition and never be by multiplication, because multiplication is proper to procreation. And in this way, then and that I give one and one, or, as in by this fact, three. So what he's got here, I'm going to show you here, is just simply the one at the top and one below it. So it's one and then two ones below it. It's already becoming a triangle. Okay. The indivisible one makes the first divisible number. This number in its abstract nature is two. It becomes one as the concrete and divisible unity. Such is the triple nature of the Creator, and this Creator is one, but a one manifested. According to the mystical explanation of numbers, the creative God is referred to as this one, because it in one finds the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. The creative principle, that is, the creative Son, and the Spirit which binds them together. This is how numbers disengage from the abstract one. Number 3, the common function which determines past, present, and future decomposes into these three times, beginning from the moment that the first one, the first indivisible, purely quantitative, purely abstract cause distinguishes itself into the 9 other numbers that thereafter will constantly accompany it. This first cause has potentiality in it all future causes. Hence, it presents another state simultaneously that comprises past, present, and future in a single absolute. This is the 4th time. By the coordination of these times, as well as by the diversity of the double nature of numbers, one attains harmonics and dissonance, pure and mixed colors, and whole and functional weights. This is the first reason for a cosmic harmony. Number 4. This harmony is manifested in the commentary arrangement of harmonics and dissonance. This mutual complementation of two natures gives birth to a new unities, which are then complex and whose base is abstract unity. These new unities will be the origins of manifesting numbers and their quantitative nature. In this way, values develop. Number 5, harmony can only reign in the world if multiplicity disengages itself from manifested, hence divisible. Unity. This functions the same as that by which multiplicity disengages itself from the abstract one, but the act is now complicated by the fact of the preceding creation. What is creation in this abstract becomes the first procreation in the form of an idea. This idea again procreates a second time, and then the concrete world is manifested, because only in it can what is procreates in its turn. Okay, so that's the end of the forward here, and I'm going to continue on in chapter 1. And this is, again, I'm showing this is what's at the top here, chapter 1. It becomes a more complex deal here. So the chapter's name is The Irreducible One. The plan for the study of numbers that we have just described specifies what course should be followed in order to elucidate numbers from the harmonic point of view. Namely, numbers are to be regarded as the philosophical basis of cosmic genesis. This is obvious the deepest, but also, and perhaps for this very reason, the least useful form of the science. Numbers possess a practical value apart from their high philosophical importance. Precisely this last characteristic gives birth to the mysticals whose veil, impenetrable to the profane, always envelope this science, mysteries which can be known by anyone who takes the time or trouble to study, above all else, the metaphysical aspects of numbers. The reason for the secret concerning the true nature of this science will then only seem bizarre, incomprehensible, even incoherent to those who like to learn, because everything is explained to them, and the teacher does the work and that the student ought to do. It has always been said that the initiation occurs by and in itself. One cannot explain the life of things. One can only merge oneself with it and thus feel it. In every epoch, therefore, the goal of all initiatory institutions was to give to whoever asked for it the means of self-initiation. Among those called in this way were sometimes found those who were chosen. Numbers are the purest expressions of the truth because they determine the exact relation between cause and effect. They allow one to know all the hierarchical functions which from the cause give birth to the effect. Numbers, however, must not be thought of as a simple instrument of deviation. This is only, one could say, a popular virtue given to the science by the ignorant. Obviously, whoever knows this science perfectly will be able to foresee many phenomena, for he will understand the necessity and characteristics form of their evolution. In astrology, for instance, numbers possess a value unsuspected by the uninitiated. One must not, however, attribute to them virtues other than those which are their raison d'etre. The proportions and hierarchy classification of the poles and relationship that bind the effect of the cause, you see. Doubtless, the future is inevitably consequence of the cause of both past and present, but one would still have to know all the causes in order to know the effects that will constitute the future. With numbers, one can easily define the time, movement, and force which separate and immediately effect from its cause. But one must know, that is, in the full sense of the word, not the physical, but the occult cause. Again, occult means hidden and mystery. Okay? This is humanly impossible, and only the superhuman being who has succeeded in merging with space, the only quality proper to all things, can know the occult cause of anything. By numbers, one can specify the dates, that is, duration in relation to unity, day, year, month, lunar month, that is, etc., of cosmic genesis, both macrocosmic and microcosmic. Thus, the initiative will know all the essential conditions necessary for the development, that is, birth, life, and death of all things, not only the stars, not only the minerals, plants, animals, and man, but also their hierarchy, that is to say, their evolutionary arrangement into races and subraces. In this does the marvelous power of numbers consist. This is its utilitarian goal. The most difficult and most important study, however, is that of numbers from the metaphysical point of view. So he's pointing out already that simply is that, that most people are going to be following what I call a utilitarian way of looking at numbers, and that's it. They're not going to go into what I call the metaphysical point. And that's basically, most people are not interested in that because they don't know it. They don't have that desire for it, I should say. We shall begin by discerning that every phenomenon comes to realization in three stages, as the archaic symbology of the circle containing point, diameter, and cross teaches us. We shall call these three stages the cycles of polarization, ideation, and formation, respectively. The first stage, that is the cycle of polarization, is characterized by generic selection, that is the causal circle. A circuit of energy, for instance, tends towards a solution of continuity, a tendency that will find a satisfactory resolution. And the most perfect opposition is complement. This function is of essential importance and must be well understood before continuing the study. In order to completely understand this first polarization, we shall picture the initial circuit as a circuit of electrical energy as a uninterrupted conductor. So I'm just going to show you this figure 1, 2, and 3 of the piece here at the top. Figure 1 represents a closed circuit through which a current of electrical energy passes. The direction of this current is indicated by the arrow. The circuit has no solution of continuity. It is therefore a absolute. That is no manifested state. Only by virtue of our reason can we suppose the existence of such a state. This circuit is therefore ideal. Our five senses cannot conceive it. Okay? As soon as we become conscious of this ideal circuit, it becomes what figure 2 represents. That is a circuit with a solution of continuity created by the interruption as A. Now, this moment specifies for a determined quantity of energy two qualities of circuit because it is interruption of the circuit provokes both a moment of arrival and a moment of departure for the current. Consequently, two poles and a line of force results from it. The pole of arrival will be point 1, and the pole of departure will be point A. The first will be called the positive pole, the second being the negative pole. What provokes this interruption is necessary a resistance. The reason for this resistance is the necessary and determined a quantity which will complete the unique and indefinite quality of the circuit or current. The absolute state of anything is the abstraction of all quantity or divisibility from a thing, leaving only an indeterminate quality. Since our consciousness is based solely upon the relationship of quantities to the absolute, we can only conceive of this absolute state in relation to quantity. By the oppositions of resistance, that is, quantity to the activity called pure quality, the phenomenon appears. The phenomenon is perfect when resistance and activity are in harmonic state, i.e., at the moment when the resistance is equal to the activity. This moment cannot be indefinite because the phenomenon as the cause of resistance, it will be limited by time and mass. The phenomenon is therefore again a cause working against a resistance, which will be greater than the first because in involution, resistance or inertia increases in opposition to the activity which decreases. This resistance provokes a new phenomenon, and so on until the establishment of a new harmony. Eternal creation is thus the result of the opposition of a quantity to indefinite quality, and the size of this quantity is always momentarily equal to that of the quality which gives birth to it. By this fact, the phenomena is the result of the complementation of an active and indefinite absolute state with a passive, that is quantitative, definite state. Each harmonic moment in the universal possesses by this fact is actively caused and is passive caused, which is its complement. The complementation of these two poles must therefore have its effect a new absolute relative state, the new cause of the next effect. Generally, selection thus consists in a choice by the first cause, that is the activity of a corresponding resistance. In the cycle of ideation, the first polarity, which has necessarily become the new cause, is distinguished by energetic creation. This means that in order to constitute the root of the future form, the first pole establishes lines of force whose quantity and quality vary with its nature. Hence, for the third time, a cause whose effect will be definite in the cycle of formation, or idea, or polar complex having become a unity, appropriates other similar unities in order to fix the form in three directions, that is, height, depth, and size. Hence, the characteristics of this cycle is formative growth. To better understand these three cycles, let us look at an example as ordinary example called crystallization. In a saturated salt solution, the instance of polarization occurs when there is a perfect equilibrium of the conditions for a perfect solution, as degree of warmth or some other deal, and the tendency to energetic creation in the salt. This tendency may also vary according to the complexity of the nature of the salt. Generically, choices then takes place. That is to say, the most satisfactory. Hence, complementary ambient condition, e.g., the walls of the vessel, a foreign body, a crystal, the same salt artificially introduced into the liquid, functions as an energetic neutralization and hence determines the place of the first crystal formation. Polarization is the schism or the secession of the reason for the existence of a state. We find it in the explanation of the phenomenon in which a saturated salt solution deposits its crystals more rapidly if a crystal of the same salt or the salt of the same kind is introduced into the solution. In certain cases, this is even the condition sine qua non of crystallization. When the first pole is established, it realizes its own equilibrium by putting itself in energetic communication to the medium in which it is formed with other points of resistance. Then the marvelous work of organizing and neutralizing the different poles began. Centers of attraction formed by neutralization become the center of whirlpools, which from spirals, regular or irregular as the case may be, and so on until the polarization corresponds to the nature of the salt is completed. Between these two different complementary poles, lines of force or energetic rivers are established which specifies the axis of the crystal to come. At this point, the energetic creation of the crystal begins. Following this, the salt molecules have only to fix themselves according to the axes that have been traced, and crystallization enters into the phase of the third cycle, that of the formal growth. Thus, sea salt, for example, grows on three regular axes, that is, it is limited by its six passive poles, equal among themselves around an active, that is neutral, central pole, giving the form of a cube. This genesis is the same for every species of creation. Take a sip of water here. It is the comprehensible aspect of all procreation that occurs by generic selection, energetic creation, that is. in order to form itself in the period of formidable growth. We have permitted ourselves this digression in order to give the reader a better grasp of the importance of the 3 cycles of Genesis. Their importance will become quite obvious in the course of this little study. One will understand the cause of the variations in tendencies and the different vital manifestations that form the complexity of the nature of the species. This nature resides specifically in the function of numbers at the time of the becoming of these species. This becoming or manifestation of species results from the harmonic and disharmonic succession of the functions and poles of an initiative quantitative indefinite state. The first activity is provoked by a disharmony whose causes lies in the opposition of a definite quantity to an indefinite quality, as we said before. Any idea of a mass or form pertaining to the first quality must necessarily be abstracted, which goes against reason. On the other hand, it is precisely our reason which forces us to hypothesize the existence of such a state, having a single indivisible and indefinable quality which contains all forms or quantities. This state we aim to assume. This absolute, Absolute state is the first number, the irreducible one, that is. All manifestations is therefore initially a result of addition, and then of the multiplication of this first unity. Then the quantities so defined organize themselves in new unities, you see, which are the causal unities and other combinations, but are not irreducible unities, and therefore present the different qualities and quantities forming all the variants of the intelligible cosmos. When a state of disequilibrium exists, its 2 contrary non-equilibrium poles pass during the vacillation phenomenon realization from perfect disequilibrium to perfect equilibrium, and through all the stages and uses that the greater universe as a whole also passes through. Any perfect, that is to say, harmonic unity, because its causes are balanced in their mutual action and reaction, is reducible as a unity. It nevertheless constitutes, insofar as its harmonic state of a preceding creation, the pole of departure for a new phenomenon. Its successive poles are identical reproductions of the various fundamental phenomena of the cosmos, which, such as succession, that is a quantitative relation, and a proportion, that is a quantitative relation. The simultaneous function of these phenomena constitutes the organized life of plants, animals, and human beings. There are therefore 2 cosmos in a single universe: the creative cosmos of the irreducible one, which is the macrocosm, and the creative cosmos of the reducible and harmonic one, which is the microcosm. The network of all these multiple functions and the innumerable phenomena resulting from them, of which the universe is the simultaneous manifestation, may be reduced to a fundamental expression, which is the establishment of a different phase by means of numbers, proportions, and hierarchy. It is impossible for us to understand the universe without tracing back in this way all things to these quantities of indeterminate quality called numbers. If one does not derive the cosmos from these proportions, the result seems to us like one of those futuristic paintings in which the most diverse impression realized in a single instance in the consciousness of an artist are fixed on a single canvas. Doubtless it represents the truth of the moment, but the universe develops successively, that is, 2 agents preside over manifestation, time and movement. We should therefore take them into account unless we wish to lose ourselves in the illusion of phenomenon. Thus, we come to understand that to know numbers is to know the universe, and that is order. In order to study them, we must disengage numbers from the irreducible one until the first perfect reducible unity is established. 2. Follow these causal unities through the creative cycles of polarization, ideation, and formation. After this, we can replace the number 1 by some phenomenon called light or electricity. Follow it through all the stages of becoming, as borrow or find a name corresponding to such variant, and in this way slowly move towards the knowledge of the marvelous edifice that is called Hindu philosophy. Is this to say that Hindu philosophy is unique? Not at all. The terms, the names designated the principles, that is, our devas, are neither of our language nor of our habits, and our evolution consists of precisely adapting our Western language and habits to the destination and understanding of these principles. For this, Eastern philosophy is and ought to be, a welcome instructor, but its role should be limited to that of example only. So that's the conclusion of chapter 1. I'm going to stop at this point. Let's see how my voice gets. My voice is starting to get a little weak, so we'll see how that goes. But anyway, this is from the book, A Study of Numbers. This is by R.A. Schwaller de Lubicz. Hope I said that right. And I wanted to share this because I think Phil Langdon spoke of this book, and so I was able to get an interlibrary loan of this particular book. It's not that long. I think it's about 75 or 80 pages long. It's not that long at all. But it does have a lot of complex deals here. This is not my expertise. I'm not a science or physics major. But chapter 2 will be the psychopolarization. And if I decide to do that tonight, I'll do it later on. And then, probably going to be maybe later on. I don't know. It might be tomorrow. We'll see. Yeah, it's a long chapter. So we've concluded this tonight. Again, like I said, from the study of numbers. And I appreciate you being here. And what they're trying to do is give you an example of how, for us to figure these things out, we have to use numbers in order to understand. That's the key here, what he's trying to get across. So thank you for being here on the study of numbers by R.A. Schwaller. Talk to you later. You take care, and thank you for being here.